Hi boys and girls. So we're reading Boy in the Tower by Polly Ho Yen. We're on to chapter 5. We learnt a bit more about our protagonist, our main character Addy, yesterday. He lives with his mum in the tower, and his mum doesn't leave the house very much, and he very much does lots of jobs for his mum and almost cares for his mum. And then it said at the end of the last chapter that he was telling Gaia about it, and it was the day the rain stopped falling, the day the first building fell. So let's see what that means. Chapter 5. It's too hot to eat this, said Gaia. We were sitting in the hall with plates of roast dinner in front of us, a thin slice of meat, 2 greasy-looking potatoes, and a bright orange circle of carrot that were floating in a pool of brown gravy. The day the rain stopped was one of the hottest that we'd had in ages. It was funny after all the soggy raincoats and wet socks to find yourself feeling too hot all of a sudden. Everyone had basked in the sunshine during playtime and lain down on the black tarmac to rest. Guy was right. It felt too hot even to eat. The sun was shining in through the hall windows, so I had to squint when I looked up at her. I'm going to make a run for it, Gaia said, standing up. Gaia, I said, can I ask you something? She sat back down again. Does your mum ask you to do the shopping sometimes? I said. What do you mean? My mum's asked me to do that now. Do you do it? Guy's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. What do you mean she's asked you to do it? I realised that now I'd brought it up, Guy wouldn't leave me alone until she knew everything, every little detail. So I told her what had been going on. From the very first time Mum had sat me down to tell me to walk to school by myself, to the time she gave me her bank card. I didn't tell Gaia everything though, but I still wasn't prepared for the worried, frowning look that took over her face. You shouldn't be doing that. Mum says I'm grown up now. She says I do a really good job. But if you're doing all those things, then what's your mum doing? It was a good question. Mostly she was sleeping. At the same time she stopped leaving the flat, she started feeling really tired all the time. I just need to sleep, baby, Mum would say, and I would close the bedroom door behind me and not come in and sit down on the bed and tell her all about the nothing I had been doing at school that day. When did you start doing this? Gaia asked. I speared a piece of meat on my fork. It dripped gravy onto the plate, each drop making a little circular splash, just like a raindrop falling into a puddle. Addy, Gaia said softly. It'd been months since the day I came home to hear Mum crying. Crying's probably the wrong word, although she certainly was crying. Tears were running all the way down her face, and they fell from the tip of her chin onto a growing patch of wetness on her skirt. But it was also like moaning and shouting and screaming and wailing all mixed up together. It was a sound that terrified me. Mum, I said, but my voice was lost in the sound of Mum's cries. In the end I put my hand on her shoulder, and only then did she turn to look at me. She looked right through me as if I wasn't there, and then her eyes seemed to focus on me and take in who I was. She reached out for me and clasped me tightly, too tightly for her. It's all right, she said over and over again. It's all right, it's all right. But she didn't stop crying. I felt like I was the one who should have been saying that to her, because as she looked at me then, I could see her face clearly. She was hurt. One of her eyes was so swollen that it wasn't able to open properly, and the other was bruised and half open. There was a violent purple bump on her forehead, a weeping gash cut across her cheek. It looked like a wicked gaping smile. What happened? What happened? I said, but Mum didn't answer me. Her face creased as she sobbed harder, and the cut on her face looked like it was crying too. "Mummy," I said, although I didn't know what I was asking until the words were on my lips. "Who did this?" "Oh, Addie," Mum was whispering under her breath. "Oh, Addie, oh, Addie." I started crying then too, even though I wished myself not to. I wished I had rang up the police and an ambulance. I wished I'd got something to make my mum's face feel better. I wished I was able to do something other than howl into Mum's shoulder as she rocked us both back and forth, trying to make us forget she was so badly injured. But for all my wishing, I let myself huddle down into her lap and cried desperate tears for what had happened. We fell asleep like that, locked together, but when I woke up, Mum was gone from the bedroom and the room was dark. "Mum?" My voice sounded very small and alone in the dim light. Mum's voice sounded hoarse and sore. "I'm in here." She was sitting on the sofa in the darkness. I felt glad that there were no lights on so I wouldn't have to look at her poor mangled face, and then I felt ashamed of myself. "Mum!" I cried out, like she had been lost to me, and I climbed into her lap once more and buried my face into the soft fabric of her jacket. It struck me then that she hadn't even taken her coat off all this time. "It's all right, Addie. It's all right. Go back to sleep," Mum said. And I did. I knew that something bad had happened, but I couldn't ask Mum what it was. I tried to, I really did, but I couldn't force the words out of my mouth. I felt scared, wondering why Mum had been so terribly hurt, scared that it would happen again. Perhaps that one of the reasons I didn't mind doing the shopping, at least if I did it, I knew nothing bad would happen to Mum. She was safe if she was at home. I didn't tell anybody about what had happened, not even to Gaia. I didn't want it to be real, and if I didn't tell anyone, then that stopped it becoming more real, didn't it? I think Mum felt the same, and that's why she didn't tell the police or go to hospital. It's really sad. I think this does happen to a lot of people, and they don't want to face it, but it's so important to talk about it, even though it's so hard. I feel for Addie here. It's a really difficult situation for him. Really sad. Mum did start to get better in some ways. Her face started healing straight away. It went very purple and then a sort of blue, and after that it was very yellowy. You'd still see the scar on her cheek, but it stopped looking painful. I thought things would go back to how they were before, back when Mum used to tell me funny things that had happened at the shop she worked in. She was always so good at describing customers, it felt like they appeared right in front of me. Or when she would open the fridge and then slam it back shut and say, "Addie, let's get out of here," and we'd go to McDonald's for a treat. But instead, Mum retreated into herself, locking herself away from the outside world. Gaia somehow seemed to understand all this, without me even having to say it. "Maybe your Mum's got something wrong with her," she said gently, cutting through my memories. I screwed up my face when she said this, so I knew she tried to stop herself from saying the next words on her mind, but they came tumbling out. "Maybe she should see a doctor." It was only in a whisper, but I heard it. A doctor. Someone to make Mum better again. It seemed like a good idea. Her face had mended itself and there was damage on the inside. Wounds I couldn't see. They needed healing as well. When I came home from school that day, I went straight into her bedroom and said in a loud voice, "Mum, I'm home." She stirred in her sleep and then gave a sort of shrug that buried her body deeper into the bedclothes. "Wake up, Mum," I said. I'm home. There was a stale smell in Mum's bedroom. It It wasn't unpleasant exactly, but neither was it fresh or clean. An image of Mum ready for work appeared in my mind. Her clothes were neat and they smelled nice, like flowers, and what I think clouds might smell like. "Addie," she said in a small voice, "be a good boy and go and play in the sitting room, will you? I'm so tired. I've got to sleep some more. Then I'll come out, okay?" "You're always tired, all the time," I said. "Mum, do you think you could go and see someone?" "Someone? What do you mean?" Mum's voice sounded sharp, like the screech of a violin. "Someone like a doctor," I said. "I'm just tired, Addie. I have to sleep," she said. "That will make me feel better. A doctor can't help me." Just saying those few words seemed to make her more tired. "They might, Mum." In answer, Mum rolled away from me. I walked round to the side of the bed she was facing. She wasn't even asleep. She was just staring at the wall. Maybe all this time I'd thought she was sleeping when she wasn't. She was just staring at the wall, unmoving. "Mum," I said, but her face remained expressionless. "Mum!" I insisted, but she didn't even flinch. "Get up, you have to! You have to go to work!" Again, I thought of my mum dressed all nicely, like she used to be. At first I thought she hadn't heard me, but then I saw round, swollen tears roll down her cheeks. "I can't, Addie. I can't go out there." "But what about your job?" I told them I'm not going back. It happened. Mum's breathing was quickening as though she couldn't get enough air. "It happened just by the shop." "What did, Mum?" I said. "What happened?" I dared not ask her again since that night I'd come home to find her bleeding and injured. "They were there," she said simply, and she rolled over, away from me, and her shoulders shook with sobs. I put my hand on her and felt the vibrations up my arm, all her pain racking her body. After a long time, she was still, and I trod softly out of the room and let her to sleep. Before she started crying, I'd felt cross with her and I hated her. Part of me knew she couldn't help it, but another voice had whispered in my ear, "Is she trying to get better? Why won't she try and get up?" But now I only felt achingly sad and alone. I switched the television on and turned the volume up high so Mum would hear it through the walls. We used to watch television together all the time. She'd watch many programmes, and I'd watch some of hers too. She used to really like cookery shows, so I flicked through the channels to see if I could find one. If she couldn't see it, she could at least hear what they were cooking. There was nothing like that on, though, so I put on the news. They were talking about an abandoned pub that had fallen down. I recognised the pub straight away. It was right by my tower. I walked right past it to go to one of the bigger shops. It was one of those tall, old-fashioned pubs, but it had been empty for a while and its windows had been boarded up. Last time I'd walked past, I'd noticed that plants had started growing out from between the bricks. They had grey-green leaves and purple flowers that clumped together to look a bit like an ice cream cone. It was reported as just one of those strange, bizarre happenings that no one could explain. Someone or other was cross because they had just bought it and had big plans for it. Now it was just a pile of rubble. Then the newsreaders started talking about something different, and I realised how loud the voices from the television were and how I felt bad that I had turned up the volume so high in the first place. I pressed the down button on the remote control and made the voices get quieter and quieter until they disappeared altogether. Then I just sat in silence, just watching the pictures, trying to work out what people were saying by how their lips moved, like Gaia could. But I couldn't understand them. So what do you think's happened? What do you think's happened with Addie's mum, she's definitely feeling really down and really defeated about it. I really feel for her. She's finding it really difficult to get up, really difficult to go out. And someone's made her feel like that, or it sounds like a group of people made her feel frightened to go out. That must be so difficult. I wonder if you've ever felt like that. You felt like you didn't want to go somewhere because of another person. Maybe you've been the person that made that person feel badly. We all really need to think about our actions, especially in this really tricky time. This is a really difficult situation for Addie, though. I feel for him. Then what about those plants growing out of that old abandoned pub? I wonder if you've got some time, you could draw what you think that abandoned pub looks like. Rewind a little bit back in this chapter and have a draw of it and do those flowers, see if you can imagine them and how it looked. I'd love to see some of the pictures you might draw of the pub. That'd be really fantastic. I know some of you are fabulous artists. Let's go on to chapter 6. I didn't give up trying to talk Mum into getting help. The next day she was up and tried to give me a shopping list, but I wouldn't take it unless she came with me. "Come on, Addie," she said when I refused to put out my hand for the fluttering piece of paper. "The bread's gone green. You don't want to eat green bread, do you?" "No, I don't." "Why don't we go together and we could go to the doctor's afterwards?" I asked. "You're a very clever boy, Addie." Mum didn't say anything. She just stared. She just started taking little gasps of air and trying not to look at me. But she did catch my eye as she took those little painful breaths, and in that tiny moment I could tell that she was blaming me for making her breathe like that, because I'd asked her to go with me. I snatched the list from her hand and ran out of the flat and went down in the lift and across the road to get the food. It was only when I realised I'd gotten all the way to the shop, I realised I'd forgotten to bring any money with me. "I'm sorry, Addie," Mum said as soon as I came back in. She was still standing in exactly the same position as when I'd left, as if she'd been frozen there the whole time I was away. "I know this can't be fun for you." I didn't say anything, but I just reached up to the jam jar where we kept our money and took out a £5 note that had been folded tightly in half, again and again, till it was only a little square. I couldn't look Mum in the eye. I felt like I'd failed her, and it was an unbearable feeling, a pressure that had settled over my chest and wouldn't let up. Do you really think Addie's failed his mum? I don't. But I think it's really hard for him because they rely on each other so much. He's been so helpful to her, and it's just a really difficult situation. I feel for him. I felt like I'd failed her, and it was an unbearable feeling, a pressure that had settled over my chest and wouldn't let up. "Let's go together. It's a good idea," she said. I looked at her sharply. She looked like she might start crying, but she was also nodding a little as if to say, yes, I can do this." "Are you sure, Mum?" I couldn't believe it. I felt too glad even to smile. Mum gave me another of her funny nods. She stood up a little unsteadily and, holding my hand, she walked towards the front door. Every step was an effort, and I was reminded of the way a snail moves, those tiny movements propelling it forward bit by bit. I felt so happy as she took those few shuffling steps past our front door, but also daunted by the task that lay ahead. The shops and the doctor's surgery seemed very far away. It was as if we'd just begun to climb a mountain and we couldn't see the top because it was surrounded by thick white clouds. We'd made it as far as the lifts when she started doing the funny breathing again. Her hands tightened around mine, and I tried to give her a reassuring squeeze back, but I don't think she felt it. She was holding on so tightly. "I can't do it, Addie. I'm sorry, I can't." As she turned back to her flat, Her eyes met mine for the briefest of moments, and again they seemed to say, "Don't make me do this. This is hurting me." And just like that, I was standing on my own in the corridor with the sound of our front door slamming, echoing in the emptiness. I did the shopping and I almost made it home without crying, apart from when the woman in the shop put a lollipop in my bag, along with the bread and milk, and said, "Looks like you need one, love." "Thank you," I said. "You're welcome, honey," she said, and I shocked myself when my eyes filled with tears. I quickly ran out, leaving the whole £5 note on the counter without waiting for my change, just so I wouldn't have to talk to the kind woman anymore. I walked past the old pub that had fallen down. It was a pile of bricks, but I could just about make out the sign that was sticking out of the bricks. I had a picture of a man's face on it. I'd forgotten that had even happened. I'd been so worried about Mum. When I finally got home, Mum was back in bed. I didn't go and check on her. I wanted to believe that she was sleeping, not lying awake in the dark, waiting for the morning to come. This is a really tricky one. I feel really sad for Addy right now. See if you can empathise with him for next time. Think about how he must be feeling right now, and again the type of person that he must be. He's putting up with all these things by himself, and I wish that he would tell someone, whether that's Gaia, whether that's a teacher, whether that's the kind lady in the shop. Someone could help him. And I really feel sad for him. I understand why he's not saying anything. It's a tricky situation. But I wish I want to help him. I'm sure you guys do too. I'm looking forward to seeing what's coming next in chapter 7 and 8. We'll read those together tomorrow. Bye guys.